Hello students, how are you all? I hope you yesterday enjoyed my YouTube live class of economics in which I covered poverty as a challenge and its few topics. So this is Ruchika Sharma back with one more recorded video on the topic poverty as a challenge. In this recorded video, I'm going to cover the last two topics of this chapter. Let me give you a quick review that what we have covered till now. So first of all, I would like to make you people revise the meaning of poverty. Basically, poverty is a situation in which individuals are not able to satisfy their basic needs like food, clothes, shelter, education, health, safe, clean drinking water, sanitation, etc. So, when somebody is not able to satisfy basic requirements of life, that person will be considered poor. So, this was the simple meaning of poverty that you all need to learn. After the meaning of poverty, I would like to tell you that poverty and poor people in India are something that we come across every day. Even if we see beggars on the streets, child working in dhabas, people who are living in slum areas, jhuggis, right? All these people are poor people. And even if I talk about data, then reports have been published that every fourth person in India is a poor. In total, 27 crore people of India are poor. So this was the basic introduction regarding poverty that we have covered in live class also. Then we did two case studies, one urban and one rural. Out of that we concluded these are the dimensions of poverty like unemployment, size of families, landlessness, etc. These are the dimensions of poverty. After that, let's revise what we have covered in our previous video lesson, recorded one, right? So let's talk about the concepts that we had covered in our recorded video lessons. That is, first concept that we covered in our previous video lesson was vulnerable groups. That means there are some communities and groups, you can say that, which are most vulnerable to poverty, right? In other words, you can say that there are social or economic groups of India which are more likely to be poor and which are more likely to remain poor in the coming years. Among these vulnerable groups, we have scheduled caste and scheduled tribe households. These are the groups that belong to social groups, right? So social groups in which we study scheduled caste and scheduled tribe households, which are among vulnerable groups of India. And similarly, among the economic groups, the most vulnerable groups are the rural agricultural labor households and the urban casual labor households. We have studied that 48 out of 100 people belonging to scheduled tribes in rural areas are not able to meet their basic needs. Similarly, 47% of casual workers in urban areas are below the poverty line. About 50% of landless agricultural workers and 43% of scheduled castes are also poor. So we can say that these four communities of India are more vulnerable to poverty. That means chances of becoming poor or remain in poverty are more for these groups. Now, one additional topic that we covered under this topic as major topic is poorest of the poor. See, apart from these social groups, there is also inequality of income within a family. In other words, you can say that within a poor family, some members are the most poorest among the other members. So there is inequality in the family of a poor person. So in poor families, all suffer, but some suffer more than others. See, discrimination. Women, elderly people, and female infants are systematically denied equal access to resources available to the family. Therefore, women, children, and old people are poorest of the poor. If they have resources with them, then major resources will be utilized by the male members of the family. If they have money to get good education, then education facility and education will be provided to the male members of the society. Girls are not supposed to go out and get education and get equal rights as boys in the poor family. So there you can see that discrimination exists in poor family, which leads to women, children, and old people becoming the most poorest of the poor family. The next topic that we covered in our previous video lesson was interstate disparities. Disparities stand for inequality, differences, right? So poverty in India also has this aspect, interstate disparities. Some states are more poorer than the other states. And let's talk about the states which have been under poverty for so long and still there is no improvement in the condition. According to 2011-12 data, states like Madhya Pradesh, Assam, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and Odisha had above all India poverty level. Suppose in India poverty ratio is 23%, but poverty in these states are much higher than 23%. And there are also some other states which have lesser poverty ratio than the overall poverty ratio of India. There has been a significant decline in poverty in Kerala, Jammu and Kashmir, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, and West Bengal. And states like Punjab and Haryana have traditionally succeeded in reducing poverty with the help of high agricultural growth rates, human resource development, good public distribution system of food grains, land reform measures. All these factors have contributed towards the growth of these states, and consequently poverty ratios have been reduced to a significant extent in these states only. The last topic that we covered in our previous video lesson was global poverty scenario. As I just discussed right now, that in India we can see there is disparity among the different states of India. Some states are poorer than others, while some are having lesser number of poor people in them. So likewise, if we talk about global poverty, then proportion of people in developing countries living in extreme economic poverty has fallen from 43% in 1990 to 22% in 2008. Although there has been a substantial reduction in global poverty, it is marked by great regional differences. Simply we can say that globally poverty no doubt has been reduced, but we cannot claim that poverty is reduced in every country of the world. There are some countries who have witnessed reduction in poverty, but at the same time there are other countries who are still facing chronic problem of poverty. About our neighboring country, China. China and even Southeast Asian countries have seen a substantial decrease in poverty ratios as a result of rapid economic growth and massive investments in human resource development. So if a country is having good economic growth, and if at the same time they are able to develop their human resource, poverty ratios will be decreased accordingly. Number of poor in China has come down from 85% in 1981 to 14% in 2008 and to 6% in 2011. In the countries of South Asia, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh, Bhutan, you can witness there is reduction in poverty, but decline has not been as rapid as China. Now, there is one more issue that is related to poverty line. What do you mean by poverty line? Do you remember it? Let me remind you all. Actually, poverty line is a method which is used to determine poor people in any country. So, poverty line is the cutoff point which divides the population among poor and non-poor categories. But one thing that I have told you very clearly, that poverty line may vary with time and place. Poverty line of India may be much lower as compared to poverty line of developed country like USA. I gave you example of car and house. The people who is not having his own house and car is considered poor in USA, while if a person is able to afford their living, that the person is able to afford food, clothes, shelter, maybe a rented one, the person will not be considered poor in India. So poverty line is different in different countries. Likewise, globally, World Bank has given poverty line as $1 per person per day. That means World Bank use a uniform standard for the poverty line. Minimum availability is $1 per person per day. That means if in any country a person is spending $1 or more than $1, that person will be non-poor, and if he is spending lesser than $1, that person will lie in poverty. So there is a large difference between percentage of poverty living in percentage of people living in poverty in India according to Indian government and according to World Bank. Indian government no doubt has claimed that there is only 23 to 25% poor people in India, but at the same time World Bank has claimed that this proportion is around 35% in India. That means World Bank says 35% of population of India are living in poverty, while Indian government according to Indian poverty line has showcased data that only 23 to 25% people are poor in India. So there is a difference in poverty line estimated by different countries, different governments, and even by World Bank. So these were the topics that we covered in our previous video lesson. Now is the time to go to the last two topics of this chapter so that we can cover and finish the chapter poverty as a challenge. So which are the 2 or 3 topics that are left to be discussed? So this is the list that we are going to study today. Number 1 topic is causes of poverty. That means we are going to talk about the reasons why people of India are poor, or why people in the world are living in poverty. The second most important topic of today's video is anti-poverty measures. Basically here we are only going to talk about India. What measures or what policies or what laws have been implemented in order to reduce poverty in India by the government of India. The third and the final topic of this chapter is the challenges ahead. Which are the challenges or which are the issues that are yet to be taken care of. So, my dear students, let's get started with the first topic of today's lesson, that is causes of the poverty. Which are the major causes of poverty, especially in India? In other words, you can say that today we are going to talk about the reasons why poor people of India are suffering so much for so long, since independence or even before independence till now. So there were a number of causes for the widespread poverty in India. One historical reason is the low level of economic development under the British colonial administration. That means during British rule in India, economic growth and economic development was very low. Why? Why India was not able to grow properly under Britishers? Which are the different policies adopted by Britishers that led to the slow economic growth of India? Basically, we are talking about trade policies of Britishers. Since Britishers had adopted discriminatory trade policies towards India. Discriminatory means if India is willing to trade according to the wishes of British, then India will be able to export and import of goods and services freely. But if Britishers are not supporting India with the practice of trade with any other country than Britain, then India will have to pay a lot of, or Indians will have to pay a lot of tax to Britishers. That is devastating for the Indian traders. Actually, my dear students, before Britishers, India was successfully exporting handicrafts to the rest of the world. And by selling handicrafts to other countries of the world, India and Indian handicrafts were able to earn a lot of money. And with that money, or with that production, GDP or growth rate of India was very high. That is the time when Britishers entered India with the objective to exploit Indian resources and Indians for their own benefits. So after taking power in India, Britishers firstly led to adopt such tax policies which affected adversely Indian handicrafts. So basically, decay of Indian handicrafts can be witnessed or could be witnessed during British rules. The policies of the colonial government ruined traditional handicrafts and discouraged development of industries like textiles. And subsequently, the low rate of growth persisted until the 1980s. This further resulted in less growth opportunities and low economic growth of income, or low economic growth of India. This was accompanied by a high rate of population. So the first reason why poverty can be seen in India, that was because of the policies adopted by Britishers that ruined Indian handicrafts and industries. So low economic growth under Britishers was the first reason why most of the people of India were poor since independence. The second reason that we are going to study now is high growth rate of population. The high growth rate of population means when grows, there is more requirement of food, clothes, shelter, education and health. But if government and people are not able to afford these, then poverty will be increased accordingly. So under British rule already there was low economic growth, and along with low economic growth, now population growth rate was very high. So people are more in number as compared to the available facilities. So there is one significant strata of the population who are not able to afford basic needs, and they will be considered poor. So two major reasons becomes: one, low economic growth under Britishers; number two, population growth rate being very high. Now Let's talk about job opportunities. With the spread of irrigation and the green revolution, many job opportunities were created in agriculture field or agricultural sector, no doubt. That means when we were able to adopt modern technology in agriculture or in farming, and when we were using modern methods of farming, then many jobs were created, opportunities were created, but the effects were limited to some parts of India. As I have already told you that due to green revolution, only states like Punjab, Haryana, Western Uttar Pradesh are benefited, while rest of the country remained untouched with the effect of green revolution. So jobs are created, but in these states only. Rest of the India were still facing the problem of lack of jobs and poverty. The industries, both in the public and the private sector, did provide some jobs, but these were not enough to absorb all the job seekers. Industries were employing people, but unemployed people were very high in number as compared to job created by the industries. So people who were not able to find proper jobs in cities started working as rickshaw pullers, vendors, construction workers, domestic servants, you can say maids, etc. But with this irregular small incomes, as we have also studied the case study of Lakha and Ramsaran and his wife Santa Devi, in which all the three were employed, right? They were looking employed, but the income that they were earning from their employment was just not enough to sustain their living and their families' living. That's because there were no proper job opportunities available to these people, right? So jobs were not according to their potentials. With this regular or irregular, we can say that with this irregular small income, these people could not afford expensive housing. They started living in slums on the outskirts of the cities, and the problem of poverty, largely a rural phenomenon, also became the feature of the urban sector. So in other words, my dear students, we can say that when people migrate from villages to city in search of job, and there are no jobs for them, they have to work on daily basis, or their income is very irregular when they work as a rickshaw puller or when they work as maids, vendors, right? So their with this irregular income, they are not able to satisfy the very basic needs of life. So that is why they become or they remain poor. So this is the third cause, lack of job opportunities and then irregular income. Another feature of high poverty rates has been the huge income inequalities. This has been one of the most prevalent problem of India. Some people are earning in lakhs, while some people are even not able to afford 2 square meal a day. So this inequalities has been one of the major reason of poverty in India. One of the major reason for this is the unequal distribution of land and other resources. Why some people are earning very high while others are not able to even arrange 2 square meal a day? Why is this inequality? That's because undistributed, or you can say that unequal distribution of land and other resources. The picture that is shown here, you can say that small number of people, maybe 4, are having good amount of or good land with them, while large number of people on the other hand are only having small holdings with them, right? So people who are having small holdings, accordingly their income will be small as compared to people who are having large holdings. So this inequality can lead to poverty in India. Despite many policies, we have not been able to tackle the issue in a meaningful manner. Actually, land reforms had been introduced along with Green Revolution in India, so as to uh, eliminate or uh, eradicate such kind of problems. यानी कि inequalities were targeted to be removed with land reforms like abolition of zamindari system, sealing of land holding. In sealing of land holding, actually a limit was fixed for every individual, highest limit to acquire piece of land, so that if a person is having extra land than the limit set, suppose the limit is 20 hectares for a person and the person is having 25 hectares, so 5 hectares are surplus, 5 hectares land is extra. That 5 hectare land will be taken from wealthy person and given to and distributed to landless farmers of the village. This was the policy, sealing of land holding adopted by the Indian government, but still we have not able to eliminate the problem of inequalities in India. Basically, inequalities in the distribution of land and resources. Major policy initiatives like land reforms, which aimed at redistribution of assets in rural areas, have not been implemented properly and effectively by most of the state governments. Now, central government has made one law, has made one reform, that sealing of land holdings, like set a limit for every farmer. If a farmer is having excess land, take excess land from him and give that or redistribute this excess land to landless farmers, so that we can achieve equalities in the distribution of land. But still state governments have not put enough effort so that inequalities could be removed. Since lack of land resources has been one of the major cause of poverty in India, lack of land resources means landlessness. We have also seen in case studies one dimension, or rather first dimension that we discussed in our previous lessons, was landlessness. If people are able to acquire their own land, they will plow, they will work hard on that field, and they are going to earn money, and accordingly they will not be poor anymore. But if they are not having their own land, they have to work on the fields of other, and they are just getting few kilograms of food grains in return of their work hard, so they will be poor forever. So landlessness is also one of the major reason of poverty in rural India. Proper implementation of policies could have improved the life of millions of rural people. So liability of government is not just to make laws, but implementation of laws are to be given attention. Till now we have studied causes of poverty. Number 1, low economic growth under Britishers. Number 2, population growth. Number 3, lack of job opportunities. Number 4, inequalities in the distribution of land. And now many other socio-cultural and economic factors are also responsible for poverty in India. In order to fulfill social obligations and observe religious ceremonies, people in India, including the very poor, spend a lot of money. So if a poor people have to arrange marriage, right, have to observe various religious ceremonies, all these need money, and these very poor people of India are not having money with them, but they are forced to, then only they are forced to take loan from the money lenders and from the big farmers of the villages. Therefore, small farmers need money to buy agricultural inputs also, like seeds, fertilizers, pesticides, etc. Because these people are not having enough money to buy agricultural inputs by themselves, and they all have to borrow money from moneylenders and from big farmers of the village, and they become victims of indebtedness, so they are gotten into debt trap. So the high level of indebtedness in both the case that we see in rural areas, and this becomes the cause and effect of poverty. So the fifth cause of poverty is high rate of interest to be given on the loans taken by the small farmers and poor people. So this was the topic causes of poverty. Let me summarize this. There are total 6 causes of poverty. Number 1, low economic growth. Number 2, high population growth. Number 3, lack of job opportunities. Number 4, irregular income. If even people are having job, then also their incomes are irregular. Then fifth is unequal distribution of land, and the sixth one is indebtedness of poor people. So now let's proceed to the next topic of today's video lesson, that is anti-poverty measures. Since we have seen in detail the causes of poverty, now we are going to eliminate each cause of poverty so that overall poverty can be removed for India. Now this is anti-poverty measure. Anti-poverty measures, that means policies adopted by the government of India in order to, or with the view to, reduce poverty in India or eliminate rather poverty in India. Removal of poverty has been one of the major objectives of Indian developmental strategy, Indian economic planning. The current anti-poverty strategy of the government is based broadly on 2 planks. Number 1, promotion of economic growth, and number 2, targeted anti-poverty programs. Now let's talk about promotion of economic growth. How, if Indian government is able to attain rapid economic growth, then poverty will be reduced automatically. What is the connection between economic growth and poverty? Let's talk about that. Actually, with rapid economic growth, we can see more resources are utilized in best ways, and human resources are also utilized in better way. That means more jobs are created and most of the human resources are utilized in the best possible way. When all the people of the country who are working population and who are willing to work are getting work and getting better salaries and their income is increased, then obviously poverty will be reduced. So there will be reduction in number of poor people of India. Thus, we can simply say that by attaining a high economic growth, profits will be more. And if producers are getting more profits, they are going to produce more. So production will be more. And for production of goods and services, we need labor. Job opportunities will be created. And to satisfy the opportunities or job requirements, more investment will be made in human resource, like better schools, colleges, better hospitals, everything, every basic facility, infrastructural facilities will be provided so that a proper human resource development can be attained, so that educated people or skilled labor can get jobs and can do production work for the producers. And if population of India are getting all the basic amenities of life like education, health, sanitation, then obviously poverty and poor people will be removed. So economic growth leads to reduction in poverty indirectly, since we claim that economic growth can lead to reduction of poverty. But if economic growth has led to increase in salaries of richer section only, how will poorer be benefited with these economic issues, with economic growth? So no doubt government has putting a lot of effort in increasing or in raising economic growth of India, but there is no direct link of economic growth with the reduction of poverty, as long as inequalities exist in India. So we have to take care of the second plank of government policy, that is targeted anti-poverty programs. That means such laws and such strategies are to be adopted by government which directly reduce the poverty in India. Over a period of 30 years lasting up to early 80s, there were little per capita income growth and not much reduction in poverty. Official poverty estimates, which were about 45% in the 1950s, remained the same even in the early 80s. Since the 80s, Indian economic growth has been one of the fastest in the world. The growth rate jumped from the average of about 3.5% a year in the 1970s to about 6% during the 1980s and 1990s. The higher growth rates have helped significantly in the reduction of poverty, no doubt. Therefore, it is becoming clear that there is a strong link between economic growth and poverty reduction. Economic growth widens opportunities and provides the resources needed to invest in human development. This also encourages people to send their children, including the girl child, to schools in the hope of getting better economic returns from investing in education. However, the poor people may not be able to take direct advantage from the opportunities created by economic growth. Moreover, growth in agriculture sector is much below expectations. There has been a direct bearing on poverty, as a large number of poor people live in villages and are independent, or you can say that are mostly dependent on agriculture. In these circumstances, there is a clear need for targeted anti-poverty programs. Anti-poverty programs which can directly benefit poor people of India are Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act 2005, Prime Minister Rozgar Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Gramodaya Yojana, Rural Employment Generation Program, Swarna Jayanti Gram Swarozgar Yojana, and etc. We are going to talk about all these anti-poverty strategies in detail. So first of all, let's talk about Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, NREGA, launched in 2005. NREGA aims to provide 100 days of wage employment to every household to ensure livelihood security in rural areas. That means if rural people who are poor are not able to get job after applying for job in employment exchange, then according to NREGA, at least 100 days wages will be provided to them so as to they can afford their basic living. NREGA also aimed at sustainable development to address the cause of drought, deforestation, and soil erosion. You can see that 1/3 of the proposed jobs in NREGA have been reserved for women only. So discrimination on the base of gender could be removed. The scheme provided employment to 220 crores person days of employment to 4.78 crore households. The share of SC/ST women person days in the scheme are 23%, 17%, and 53% respectively. The average wage has increased from 65 in 2006-7 to 132 in 2013-14. So this was NREGA. Now let's talk about next anti-poverty strategy of India, that is Prime Minister Rozgar Yojana, PMRY. This is another scheme which was started in 1993. The aim of the program is to create self-employment opportunities for educated unemployed youth in rural areas and small towns. That means they were given capital, or you can say that small amount of money, so that they can build or they can start their own work and they become self-employed. They also helped in setting up small business and industries. So government was planning to provide money so that people of rural area and small towns can become self-employed. The next program was Rural Employment Generation Program, REGP, which was launched in 1995. The aim of the program is to create self-employment opportunities again, as we have just discussed in Prime Minister Rozgar Yojana. A target for creating 25 lakh new jobs have set for the program under the 10th 5-year plan. Next scheme is Swarn Jayanti Gram Swarozgar Yojana, SGSY, which was launched in 1999. The program aims at bringing the assistant poor families above the poverty line by organizing them into self-help groups through a mix of bank credit and government subsidies. So poor people were encouraged to form a self-help group for which they could get loans from bank at low rate of interest, and they could pool up their savings and help each other. And government subsidies were also provided to these self-help groups. Under the Pradhan Mantri Gramodaya Yojana, launched in 2000, additional central assistance is given to states for basic services such as primary health, primary education, rural shelter, rural drinking water, and electrification. Therefore, fund had been released by central government to state governments so that state governments could provide better basic needs in their regions. Another important scheme is Antodaya Anna Yojana, which is about providing good quality food grains to poor people at affordable prices. You can see that wheat and rice were provided to poor people at such nominal and fair prices which they can afford very easily. So that was under Antodaya Anna Yojana, in which people of India who belong to poverty could get food at the minimum possible prices. Now let's talk about how these policies have influenced poverty. The results of these programs have been mixed. One of the major reason for less effectiveness is the lack of proper implementation and right targeting. Actually, there has been overlapping of all these schemes. Actually, all these schemes are interrelated and overlapping. So, and moreover, due to corruption in India, the real targeted people are still not able to access the benefits of these policies. Due to corruption, government officials grant funds to those people who are related to them and who are giving them bribe. So accordingly, these policies have not been able to be very effective. The reason being lack of proper implementation, corruption, overlapping of schemes. So more proper monitoring is required in order to eliminate the problem of poverty in India. The last topic of today's lesson is the challenges ahead. Now let's talk about what are we going to do in future in order to eradicate this problem. Poverty has certainly decreased in India, but despite the progress, poverty reduction remains India's most compelling challenge. Wide disparities in poverty are visible between rural and urban areas and among different states. Certain social and economic groups are more vulnerable to poverty, as we have discussed. So, scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, right? Poverty reduction is expected to make better progress in the next 10 to 15 years. This would be possible mainly due to higher economic growth, increasing stress on universal free elementary education, declining population growth, increasing empowerment of the women, and economically weaker section of the society. So all these factors can lead to elimination of poverty, in which we have covered economic growth, education, population growth, discrimination on the basis of caste, color, and gender. The official definition of poverty, however, captures only a limited part of what poverty really means to people. Actually, official definition of policy is poverty is only related to income, and spending. But in the eyes of social scientists, poverty is the concept that must be related to human beings and their needs. So that is why we have now broadened the concept and we have started considering poverty as human poverty. A large number of people may have been able to feed themselves, but do they have education or shelter or healthcare or job security or self-confidence? Are they free from caste and gender discrimination? Is the practice of child labor still common? So therefore, all these aspects are to be taken into consideration while we are talking about human poverty, which is a broader concept to poverty. As poverty is just related to money, is just related to income level. Are people able to arrange 2 square meal a day? But that is just not enough to live a healthy and prosperous life, right? Education, health, discrimination, all these aspects are also to be taken into consideration. That is why we have introduced now a human poverty, and the focus of Indian government should be remove human poverty from India. So that was it. That was the chapter poverty as a challenge. I hope you revise and learn the anti-poverty measures clearly. You talk about the reasons of poverty and all the concepts that we have studied in this chapter. So keep learning and keep hard working. See you soon. Thank you so much.